to gather some input to help update our state's wolf management plan. It's been 20 years since the plan was first written, and it's a good plan. We've been using it, but things have changed. Over those 20 years, the range of wolves in Minnesota has expanded. For example, people's attitudes about wolves have changed over time. So it's time to update that plan. So we've embarked on that work, and we're very pleased that you're here to help be part of that conversation. It's obvious that we are not doing things as we might have without the COVID pandemic. We've had to adapt. We would ordinarily be meeting in person. We'd be taking our show on the road and going around the state, but we're doing this virtually. And so we thank you for taking the effort to figure out how to participate. And we've been learning things as we've been doing these meetings, but if there's a glitch, we ask your patience as we work through those things. They have been working pretty well, but there's always that chance. DNR is committed to maintaining healthy wolf populations in Minnesota. That's bedrock for this planning process. And as I said, we want to hear from all voices as we go through this process. We've got this opportunity tonight. I want to point your attention to the DNR website, and we've got some pages on the DNR website that have information about wolves, about the planning process. There's a survey there that's available through the month of October. We welcome you and anybody who'd want to point to that survey to take it and provide your feedback that way. And then there's also contact information on that website. So if you want to contact DNR staff outside of this meeting, we'd encourage you to do that as well. So again, welcome to the meeting. Welcome to this conversation. Before I hand it back to Kelly, though, we do have with us tonight Commissioner Tom Peterson from the Department of Agriculture. He was at our last meeting. He must have had a good enough time that he decided to come back again. So Commissioner, thank you for attending again. And if you'd like to say a word or two, we'd welcome that.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I'm Tom Peterson, the Commissioner of Agriculture, and I actually live in the southern part of the Wolf Range, and my farm is in Pine County, and very familiar with the issue, and interesting issue. As you may or may not know, the Department of Agriculture has grants for wolf livestock depredation. And we also have grants to help wolf livestock or prevent the conflicts. And we have that grant open right now. We think it's been successful, and I appreciate the opportunity to partner with the DNR. And I find these very helpful discussions and being able to just listen tonight. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Kelly, I'll pass the baton back to you.
Thank you both so much for that. So as Dave mentioned, this is a new way for all of us to be collaborating together. So let me tell you a little bit about this tool that we're using tonight. You'll notice that you are all muted. We have almost 100 people with us and expect more to join throughout the night. And so we are keeping you all muted just to manage that attendance level. As I said, the session is being recorded, and so please review it and share it once we post it on our website. We have two ways that we're going to ask you to participate tonight. One is a Q&A and one is public comment. Time is limited. We're together for 2 hours because we think that's probably about as long as everybody wants to sit still for a video call. We ask that whether you participate with the written Q&A or the verbal public comment, you help us to most effectively incorporate your comment by explaining the why behind your question or comment, and then sharing any solutions or alternatives that you have. And if we don't have time for your question or comment, we do encourage you to get in touch with us after the meeting. Dan's email is up on the screen. It's also listed on our website. And then, as Dave mentioned, at our website, mindnr.gov/wolfplan, we have a public input questionnaire open through the month of October. So the Q&A function is one that you should see on your screen right now. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you see a little Q&A and question mark. That's number 1 on this diagram. If you select all panelists where you see number 2, and then type a question in where you see number 3, and press send, number 4, we will see those questions. You can do that throughout Dan's presentation, and then we'll ask the panelists to begin answering those questions after his presentation. And we'll be selecting the questions that are most broadly applicable to all participants. And so, again, if we don't get to your question, there are other ways to get in touch with us. And then at the end of the Q&A period, we have a public comment period. We gave people the option at registration to sign up for a public speaking slot. And so if you signed up, you should have gotten a confirmation email from me just before the meeting. You'll still remain muted until just before we call on you, and then we'll call your names one at a time. And then if we get through all the pre-registered speakers, we'll offer more speaking slots, and you can request one of those by using the raise your hand function. And so if you look in your lower right-hand corner again, you see another icon called participants. It's number 1 on this diagram. And then number 2 shows a very small hand icon. It's difficult to see, but it should show up at the bottom of your participants pane. And if you click that, we'll see that your hand is raised and that you want to offer a public comment. And we're asking folks to stick to a 1-minute limit. I'll try to limit you to that, and so keep your comments brief if you can to make sure that we can hear from as many people as possible. And our panelists will acknowledge your comment and then may offer a clarification or answers, but we probably won't do so for every comment we hear. So with that, this is a screenshot of what you'll find if you go to our website and take the public input questionnaire. So we really do encourage you to visit our public engagement website and participate that way as well. So I think that's all I have for an intro. I'll hand it off to Dan to begin his presentation. And if I missed anything, Dan, please fill in any gaps.
Thanks, Kelly. I think you covered all the logistics for tonight's meeting. We have a group of panelists from the DNR that are involved in wolf research and management, and they're here to help with questions that you have. So we'll introduce them later. But I want to say good evening to everybody, and thanks for attending this meeting. I know it's a little bit different than meeting in person, and it's great to at least have this opportunity to share information with you. I am Dan Stark. I'm the large carnivore specialist for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. I was originally hired in 2007 to implement the state's wolf management plan when they first came off the endangered species list. Prior to that, I worked on wolf research and management in Minnesota, Arizona, and New Mexico, and I currently live in Grand Rapids. Before we get started on the presentation, I want to reflect a little bit on, how we got here. Minnesota's got a robust wolf population that occupies nearly half of the state. It's considered one of the most successful endangered species success stories in North America. And no longer are wolves isolated to the northern border counties. They now occur across 31 counties in Minnesota. The population is doing well, and we want to assure that we have a management plan and a strong conservation approach to continue all the things that we've accomplished with wolf management and conservation in the state. Many of the programs that are being implemented Under the current status, under the Endangered Species Act, involve DNR and other agencies and organizations in Minnesota. And regardless of the legal status, we want to implement or develop a plan that continues that success that we've had with wolf conservation in Minnesota. There's a lot of differences that people have in regards to the values and preferences that they may hold for wolf management. I think we also need to recognize those differences, try to find some understanding, and work towards solutions to have an effective program in place. The topics that I'm going to cover tonight are not intended to be a comprehensive overview of all the issues related to wolf management. It's intended to hit some of the highlights, some of the key management aspects that occur here, give you an update on the population status, wolf depredation and management, and some of the impacts or the relationship between wolves and the ungulates that they depend on in the state. I'll also cover some of the information on the wolf seasons that we had here. And then I'll touch on some of the key differences of what is in the wolf management plan compared to how wolves are managed under the current status of threatened under the Endangered Species Act. There's also going to be additional information available, and some of you may have already found that information on our website. Many of the survey reports are on there in regards to our population surveys. There's also some upcoming webinars that are being hosted by the International Wolf Center that include an overview of depredation management and also the relationship between wolves, moose, and deer. So you can check our website for links to that or look at the International Wolf Center and find that information. So as you may all know, at the time that wolves were listed under the Endangered Species Act, the only place that had wolves in the lower 48 was in northern Minnesota and out on Isle Royale in Michigan. They're listed in 1974, and in 1978, wolves were reclassified as threatened in Minnesota, but remained endangered in the rest of the lower 48 states. And there have been efforts to remove the endangered species listings in the region and more recently. As I mentioned, I was hired in 2007 to implement the state's wolf management plan. That was the first time that they came off the endangered species list. That also occurred in 2009 and 2012. And the approach that was used at the time was to delist wolves or remove protections for wolves in this region of the country that included Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan and the surrounding area. And then as a result of court rulings, they were relisted or put back on the endangered species list in 2008, 2009, and then again in 2014. So since our initial wolf or our 2001 wolf plan was adopted, it's only been implemented for a portion of that time. And we have some information about how wolves were managed during that time. But, you know, for the most part, they've been listed as threatened since 1978. So nearly 40 years and about a 5-year period portioned out through that time that they were under state and tribal authority once they came off the endangered species list. So in March of 2019, there was a proposal to remove wolves from the federal endangered species list, and that takes a little different approach. It removes the listing for wolves in Minnesota where they're currently threatened, and also the remainder of the other lower 48 states where they are not currently, or where they are currently listed as endangered. So it includes about 44 other states. There's still not been a final decision or determination on this, and that's still pending. Minnesota's Wolf Plan was initiated, or the development of the Wolf Plan was initiated in 1998, and that included a number of public information meetings around the state. It presented information on wolf management and the planning process at the time. Many of those meetings were well attended. Over the 12 meetings, they had over 3,000 people attend those meetings. There was also a wolf management roundtable that was composed of representatives of many different interests regarding wolf management, and they were to provide guidance to the DNR in developing consensus recommendations for the wolf management plan. And they completed that in 1998, or August of 1998. In 2000, the Minnesota legislature passed a wolf management bill. It sets the state laws and regulations for what's allowed under state management. And so in 2001, following that, the DNR adopted the Minnesota Wolf Management Plan in consultation with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And it's consistent with the provisions of state law. It incorporated many of the roundtable recommendations and considers the various biological, sociological, economic data, wolf reports, and the experience that we had in Minnesota at the time. So to update this plan, we've got a number of different components, including inviting the tribal involvement and consultation that it was initiated back in the fall of last year. And we've got tribal participation on our wolf technical committee, as well as ex officio members on our advisory committee. You may also be aware that there was a public attitude survey that was completed to get information on current attitudes of Minnesotans and what they value regarding wolves and how they should be managed. I mentioned the technical committee and the advisory committee. The technical committee is made up of agencies and organizational staff in Minnesota that are involved in wolf management and research. Many of those people collaborate with us on a regular basis on our wolf population monitoring and are conducting wolf research on wolves in Minnesota. And then there's also an advisory committee that's made up of a number of different organizations and citizens that have an interest in wolf management. We had over 300 people apply for this committee, and they were selected based on the diverse values and backgrounds that they had related to wolf conservation and management. We're also taking public input in this process through an online questionnaire and providing information through these presentations, as well as more in-depth webinars that are available. We intend to have a draft update of the plan available later this year or early next year that people can review and comment on, and then have a final plan sometime next year. So wolves and wolf management get a lot of attention, and it's a topic that many people feel really passionate about. It's not surprising that there are differences in the values and attitudes that people have, and sometimes they conflict with each other. It's important that any wolf management plan that the DNR adopts reflects the differences and the interests and values of the people of the state, not just the loudest voices. And to make sure that this happens, we survey citizens to understand the relationship with wolves, the preferences for the DNR's, and the preferences for the DNR's approach to management. Scientific surveys like this one that was conducted, it reflects the populations that they target, not simply the individuals that participate. It makes the results particularly important as they help us understand how people in different groups think about wolves. Understanding the diverse values, beliefs, attitudes that people have for wolves can help inform the work of not only the DNR, but also the technical committee and the stakeholder committees that that are helping support the update. I also think that with the information from this report, you may take into consideration the other views that people have and be open to other possibilities and solutions that people may offer and maybe be more receptive to other ideas. So the information that we get from the survey will be used to inform the teams and the staff in updating the plan. This survey was conducted, it was a mail survey. It was conducted by random survey. Over 10,000 Minnesotans were surveyed from 3 different survey groups that included Minnesota residents, livestock producers, and deer hunters. And the topics that were presented in the survey were to identify how people feel about wolves or preferences for wolf populations and where they occur, and then how those wolves are managed. And some of the highlights from the survey indicated that Minnesotans support maintaining a wolf population and that it's important. There's wide support and recognition that we want to maintain a wolf population in the state. It also indicated that residents would like to see wolf numbers and the range continue or be maintained at current levels. Less than half of the residents supported having a wolf season. It was about 40%, but that was higher for the survey of the livestock producers and deer hunters. So this survey is available on our website, and there is a full report as well as a summary of that report. Historically, there were efforts to estimate wolf numbers going back to the 1950s. Some of those were more subjective and limited to information that was available at the time. So in the late 1970s, Minnesota adopted a systematic approach, and that method has remained pretty constant since that time. There's 2 parts to the wolf population survey. One that estimates the wolf range or determines that boundary or line of where we have wolves in the state. And it includes an estimate of both the total wolf range, so kind of that outer boundary, and also the area within that range that is occupied. In addition to that, it comes up with a population estimate. Population estimate is based on the average pack size and territory size of wolves that are radio collared in the winter months. The survey is conducted in the winter months when there's snow cover and no tree canopy. It's also done at the time of the year where the population is the most stable and likely is also at the lowest point before pups are born in the spring. So the surveys indicate an expanding wolf range from the late 1970s up until about the late 1990s. We didn't really see a change in wolf range between 1998 and the survey in 2008, or for those 3 surveys during that time. Wolf range remained relatively static. In more recent surveys, looking at wolf range, there's been a slight expansion in range to the south and west, and this estimate of wolf range assumes that it's contiguous wolf range to the north and the east of that outer boundary. However, as I mentioned, there's an estimate of occupied range, and some of the areas within the total wolf range don't support wolves throughout there, so we take into account, those areas that don't have wolf observations, or we don't have sign or evidence of wolves there, or don't meet a model that's used for wolf occupancy based on road density and human population density. The most recent estimate is at about 30,000 square miles within that 35,000 square mile wolf range is occupied. And then the point population estimates that have occurred during these surveys, there is a confidence interval related to this, but as you can see, the population increased pretty rapidly from about 1,250 wolves in the late 1970s up to 3,000 wolves in 2004, which was the highest estimate with these surveys. There was a decline between 2008 and 2012, but since that time we've been doing annual population estimates, and there's been fluctuation in those wolf population estimates, with the most recent estimate of about 2,700 wolves. Again, there's a confidence interval of roughly plus or minus 600 wolves for these surveys, and that's based on errors associated with the estimates of pack size and territory size. Wolf depredations on livestock cause considerable conflict and expense in Minnesota, and it's an economic problem for a number of livestock producers. It occurs annually for a number of individuals, and there's been a program in place which started in the mid-1970s, but for the most part has been relatively the same since the late 1970s when wolves were reclassified as threatened. The program's administered, or the primary agency responsible for wolf depredation conflicts in Minnesota is USDA Wildlife Services. There are also a number of other organizations, including the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, as we heard from Commissioner Peterson about the compensation claims program and the livestock conflict prevention grant that's available. And then also DNR enforcement, who's involved with investigating wolf depredation claims, and University of Minnesota Extension, who evaluates the value of livestock for those claims. In response to depredation of livestock, wolves are lethally controlled. There's also programs to provide non-lethal assistance, including funding that Wildlife Services has, and the Livestock Conflict Prevention Grant available through the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. So it's a combination of both lethal and non-lethal assistance in Minnesota. So as wolf populations increased, so did the number of complaints and the conflicts. The green line are the number of verified complaints in Minnesota, and the blue line are those locations that had conflicts. And so the difference is there may be a farm or a location where there was more than one animal killed. But since the late 1990s, this number has fluctuated annually. There hasn't been a big increase, but the changes occur year to year with other influences based on wolf population, and there's some evidence to support that changes in deer density also have some influence on wolf depredation trends. The types of complaints that occur are primarily with cattle, and about 90% of those conflicts that occur are livestock or cattle that are killed, primarily calves or young animals. Other livestock that are killed by wolves include sheep, poultry, and pigs, goats. Occasionally, a horse may be killed or injured. But there's also a significant number of dogs that are killed or injured each year, and that can be a pretty serious conflict that a person has when it occurs near a residence or a home where they have pets. And then the time of year where these types of complaints occur are primarily in the summer months. The blue bars are the complaints received, the green bars are those that are verified, and then this other line are the number of wolves that are removed from those locations. On average, that's about 170 wolves a year. It's been as high as over 200, but on average in the last decade or so, it's been about 170 wolves each year that are removed where these conflicts occur, or I should say are killed. So I want to be clear that the program is in response to verified claims, and the wolves that are involved are trapped and killed when it is determined to be wolf involvement. I also mentioned that there's a wolf compensation program, and this is administered by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. It pays compensation for livestock only, as defined in the state law. It doesn't provide compensation where pets are killed or for injuries of livestock caused by wolves. But on average, these payments have been $158,000 annually between 2014 and 2018. In 2016, the legislature appropriated funds for a pilot project to provide grants for livestock producers to use non-lethal strategies to reduce wolf depredation conflicts. And some of those strategies include fencing, livestock or calving shelters, guard animals, and other things that may be helpful for reducing conflicts. So in Minnesota, the primary prey for wolves is white-tailed deer, and also moose, where they occur, are an important prey species. There's information related to our wolf population estimates and spring deer density estimates, and there's a strong correlation to the number of wolves that we have and the density of deer from those surveys. So in some years, again, across the wolf range and based on estimates of the spring deer density, which can range from less than 10 deer per square mile to more than 20 deer per square mile. But on average, across the area where we estimate wolf range, it's averaged for these past surveys between 8 and about 12. And so the wolf population estimate appears to closely track the changes in deer density, and wolves also remain widely distributed through the deer or the forested part of the state. More specifically related to wolves and white-tailed deer. White-tailed deer are relatively abundant across the wolf range. As the wolf population increased, and our estimate in 2004 of 3,000 wolves also coincided with one of the highest deer harvests on record that hunters had. And there's also been effort to research deer and the impacts that wolves have, but more specifically looking at deer survival in parts of the state. Based on studies in north central Minnesota, some of the most important, or the most important influence on deer survival were hunter harvest and winter severity. Wolves are definitely a key component of deer mortality. However, wolves alone are not the driving force in deer population numbers. They're an important component, and combined with winter severity and deer harvest are going to have influence on deer populations in an area. In the parts of the state where moose occur, and most recently, moose numbers have declined pretty significantly. Over time, moose numbers declined, primarily as a result of a number of different human-caused factors, but this decline has occurred more rapidly in recent years. And from 2005, we had an estimate of about 8,000 moose in the northeastern part of the state, or in the Arrowhead region. And in 2019, that estimate was less than half, about 3,100 moose. And what's causing this decline is a lower adult moose survival and a decline in the breeding age females. It's primarily health related, and one of the most significant factors is brainworm. Secondarily, or about 33% of the adult moose mortality is wolf predation. And where wolf predation is the strongest or having the most significant impact is on calf mortality. So this pie chart is the percent of wolf predation, or the percent that wolf predation causes on calf mortality. So about 67% of the mortality causes are from wolf predation. And it is having an effect and limiting recruitment into the population. One thing to keep in mind is, there are other strategies in trying to address moose population health. There's been an effort to reduce deer density within moose range, and that might also have some effects on increasing wolf predation on moose in that area as deer density goes down. Now in 2012, managing a wolf season was new for Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, but regulating harvest for the conservation and management of species or wildlife is pretty well established. Minnesota passed legislation in 2011 that removed a 5-year waiting period following the removal of wolves from the federal endangered species list, and at the same time classified wolves as a game species. Following the removal of wolves from the federal threatened species list, Minnesota state laws were passed that provided the framework and clarification for the Minnesota DNR to implement a season. It specifically established a season start date at the start of Minnesota's firearms deer season and reserved a portion of the overall quota for wolf trapping. The authority was provided in legislation that allowed the DNR to implement and manage this season through through limiting licenses, season length, and the methods of take. And then the DNR implemented one of the most highly regulated and monitored seasons in state history for the first time in 2012. The season was monitored daily through a mandatory registration of harvest by hunters and trappers, and monitoring the season progress with the ability to implement closure of the season by zones when those levels were reached. So monitoring and restricting the overall take ensured that the total number of wolves killed did not have any long-term negative population impact to the wolf population. And the results of those seasons are listed in this table. Initially in 2012, we had offered over 6,000 licenses between the two seasons, and there were 413 wolves killed that year. We made adjustments in the following years based on population information, reduced licenses, and also reduced the overall number of wolves that could be taken by hunters and trappers. Minnesota's wolf management plan adopted this position statement in 2001, and the Minnesota DNR is committed to ensuring the long-term survival of the wolf in Minnesota and also to resolving conflicts between wolves and humans. And so that's the overall guidance for wolf management in Minnesota. There's some more specific information related to population management. There's a minimum population goal of at least 1,600 wolves. And this is a floor. This is not a management objective. We're not trying to reduce wolf numbers to that level. It's to indicate that if we are ever at or approaching that level, that we need to figure out why and reverse the population trend and maintain a population above that number. It's also above the federal recovery goal of 1,251 to 1,400 wolves that was established to assure the survival of wolves in Minnesota. I also mentioned that Minnesota passed a legislation in 2011 that removed a 5-year waiting period for a wolf season. In the initial wolf plan, or the 2001 wolf plan, it indicates that there is a 5-year waiting period prior to having a season in Minnesota. And that's why that was changed. In regards to wolf depredation management, there's some differences in how wolves can be controlled or killed compared to what's allowed now. And the state's divided into 2 wolf management zones, or wolf depredation management zones. Zone A is more the core wolf range. This was also federal recovery zones 1 through 4. Zone B is a remainder of the state. So in Zone A, wolves can be killed where there is a verified loss, and that can be done by state trappers or, as is done now with federal wildlife services trappers. That can be done within 1 mile of where the damage occurs and for a period up to 60 days. Shooting wolves is allowed where there is an immediate threat, and an immediate threat is defined as a wolf stalking, attacking, or killing livestock or pets. In Zone B, the same provisions apply as in Zone A, but in addition to that, wolves can be controlled where there's been a verified loss in the last 5 years. So under state law, if a landowner or livestock producer has had verified livestock killed in the last 5 years, they could request that a control area be open, and wolf trapping could be implemented for a period up to 215 days. It's also allowed to shoot wolves to protect the livestock and pets. There does not need to be an immediate threat. And so there's a number of different components of the wolf plan that I'm not going to go into detail, but you should be aware of. Population monitoring is obviously important and something that we have been doing in recent years, regardless of the legal status, and have been doing on an annual basis. And there may be other methods out there to improve the accuracy or precision of the estimate. We have done some pilot projects to look at that, but have yet to come up with a different method that's more effective or improves the current estimate. Enforcement, obviously it's important that we enforce the laws and regulations around wolf management and what's allowed under state law and investigate illegal take of wolves. Information and education, providing information to the public about wolf management, changes in the population. You know, a lot of this is done through presentations and information on our website. We also seek to collaborate with organizations like the International Wolf Center and other education organizations that present information on wolves and other wildlife in the state. Identifying important research topics, what might be emerging issues that we may not fully understand or need more information on. And then funding, you know, identifying resources to manage these programs or to implement these programs, and making decisions on what, you know, we can do in those recommendations of how we manage wolves depending on available resources.